So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Grey Goose. I'm the Dungeon Master on litlcord. And so I also run a campaign, an Icewind Dale campaign. I think we're probably on like session 12, 13, if I had to guess. But so basically, the gist of this is going to be your DM basics, your dungeon.
Hello.
Hey.
I have arrived. Sorry for interrupting.
No worries. Yeah. So we're going to talk about the individuals of being a DM, kind of the ups and downs. I can hear a fan or something kind of running in the background. I don't know who that is. So, if y'all don't mind, I'm saying, I'll just monologue.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. So we'll kind of talk about the basics of being a dungeon master, and walk through kind of why you'd want to be one, to see if it's kind of what you'd be interested in doing, what you kind of need to know as a dungeon master. Talk about kind of a DM screen, and kind of the secret being a really good DM. And then we'll talk about things that you don't have prepared, those impromptu situations. And then after all that's said and done, we'll talk about the individual miscellaneous questions that you guys asked, and I'm just going to kind of run through those and give my personal opinion on them. I'll kind of start off with what is a dungeon master. In a definition term, it's a person who runs the game of D&D. Without the dungeon master, there is no Dungeons and Dragons. They are kind of like the console, the CPU unit, or the game console, or whatever you have it. Without it, you can't play the game. They're kind of a planner, a storyteller, the mitigator of the rules, and a timekeeper. All those things combined, they kind of run through the game just to make sure their priority number one is to make sure the players have a good time. That's really what it's all about. And if the players have a good time, the dungeon master goes, man, that was you can always say there's nothing better than when your players come back and say, man, that was fun. Let's do that again next week. They may have all died, but at least they had fun doing it. That's really the sole purpose. Then that's kind of everything as far as a dungeon master is concerned. And we'll answer questions kind of at the end. So if you got something, just write it down, or something we'll hit it at the end. And we'll kind of run through these little items here. So what's a dungeon master? He's a planner, or she, a storyteller, a mitigator of the rules, and a timekeeper. And question number 2, why would I want to become or be a dungeon master? Now, there's a whole other enjoyment to Dungeons and Dragons. I know a lot of players have, like, oh, I'm going to build this big bad dude. He's going to be a tank. He's going to be, an amazing healer. He's going to be a shady rogue. He's going to be an ultimate ranger that can shoot 120 feet, or some kind of crazy sorcerer that sold his soul to the craziest demon lord of the underworld. And now he's got magic pew-pew powers, But as far as a DM goes, their enjoyment comes from the actual planning and the building of the worlds and the story. So while we're kind of sitting here, all kind of nestled together and talking about Dungeons and Dragons, I'll actually be creating a one-shot in my head while I'm talking to you about what we're doing here. So it'll be just a basic one-shot. So that's the gist of how easy being a dungeon master is. And we'll and at the end we'll kind of talk about it. Role playing is the other item as far as why you'd want to be a dungeon master. Playing a character is great. It's awesome going from level to level, and hanging out with your friends. You really grow attached to that individual character, so it hurts that much more when they they die, or or making death saves, you're like, holy smokes, I'm about to die here. But it's so much more enjoyable when they make that final kill on that boss. You get and some of you may know what I'm talking about, that those cold shivers. I even get it sometimes when you guys do it. I'm just like, oh, they did it, that feeling of success. That's the epitome of Dungeons and Dragons. And there's an ultimate realism to it that everybody enjoys. And that's the sole entity of being a dungeon master, is enjoying how the players react to what you have created. So you have you build a whole story. So let's say hypothetically I'm just going to go ahead and start jotting some information down. We'll just say goblins are attacking the town. That's kind of our hook, So, players will be like, okay, well, I don't give a crap about this town. Well, what if your family lives there? You're like, oh, well, they're not attacking a town; they're attacking your town, and they've slain the mayor, who happened to be your uncle. You're like, oh shit, that's my uncle, So now you've hooked your players in. You're trying to goad them into going on these missions, give them a purpose. That's called the hook. And so you're trying to hook your players. It's like fishing. You may even see me post an emote or emoji or whatever every now and then where I post a fishing hook. That's the kicker there. So you kind of have your basic idea of why you would want to be a dungeon master, which is you enjoy planning and building the worlds and the stories, role playing, individual characters. That's not as hard as you think it is. You kind of just, there's, I don't know, I maybe have, 7 voices or something like that. I got like an old man. I got like a gruff guy. I got I don't even know if I can do a lady's voice. It's mainly just my voice, but lighter. But that's always enjoyable. It's fun to RP with the characters like that. And enjoying how the players react to what you've created. Question number 3 is, what do I need to know? And emphasis on need to know / do as a dungeon master. Dungeons and Dragons can be as simplified or as complicated as you want it to be. If you're starting out as a dungeon master and you're wanting to play with your friends, I'd say get after it. One of my biggest regrets in playing Dungeons and Dragons is I didn't start sooner. I wish I'd started in high school, elementary school. It's a game that I really love and I really appreciate because it brings a lot of people together. But speaking of bringing people together, things you probably need to know or do as a DM, you need to know the basic rules. Just understand how the game works. It revolves around a D20. You don't need to know all of the rules. I don't even know all the rules. Half the time I'll be playing a game and somebody will go, oh, well, that's not how it works. I'm like, oh yeah, you're totally right on that. Okay, well, yeah, and then you go along with it. It's not like, or you need to look it up. Like, for example, if you say, okay, well, while somebody is casting a spell, you say, okay, well, what's that spell? Can you kind of walk us through that? Is a lot of times what I'll say during a game. So players will actually read kind of what it's doing, not only for their comrades' benefit, but for my benefit as well, because it saves me time and I don't have to look it up. So, because they just read it to me. But a lot of times I'll look it up, and if anything's like, okay, there's thousands of apps out there that you can utilize. But that's basic rules. Just understand your basic rules, your basic principles. You got basically 2 roles. You're either rolling to save your ass, you're trying to roll to get some ass. That's another option with your charisma or whatever the role is, or you're trying to roll to, beat some ass. So those are your kind of options for Dungeons and Dragons in a layman's terms. But those are the 3 pieces. Proper preparation I cannot emphasize this enough. You have a time for prepping a game. You don't just want to sit down and be like, okay, what are we doing? And that's fine sometimes if you're with friends or anything. It's really important to prepare. I typically prepare for each game. I'll do like maybe an hour and a half. And we'll talk more about that as we go into the one-shots and stuff, but I typically do about an hour and a half. That kind of takes place from writing paragraphs or jotting down notes, what the characters are doing. It's important not to railroad your characters, which is the layman's term for, like, okay, you're going to do this, you're doing this, and they're like, I feel like I'm on a leash right now. Coax your players into that direction. Hook them. Give them like, okay, well, we need to go kill these goblins. They've killed our mayor. Now we're mayorless. And who was my uncle, and he's got a family. RP. Have your characters RP that moment. RP it with your aunt. Be the aunt of the uncle. Be like, oh, Conrad, he was a wonderful husband. He raised you for 12 years. You and all the other kids. Give them something. Give them some emotional hook to it. Like, oh yeah, we're gonna kick these goblins' asses. Be fun. Like, be bubbly. Be charismatic. Be the evil demon lord. Give yourself a real raspy voice or whatever. Characters really enjoy that, and it also gets them into character. So you have basic rules, proper preparation, and being fun. Roleplay, which we kind of touched base on, but really roleplay is, get into your characters. There was a question that I have to touch base on right now, which is, how many NPCs do I create? As many as you need. I would just jot down, 5 random names or people that you have. For a one shot, give yourself 3 of them. You got your aunt, that's 1. Maybe Goblin Leader 6, or whatever. That would be another one. You can RP, have a little RP moment with them before you fight them and all that jazz. But roleplay is really an enjoyment for, you always hear of everybody on Reddit or whatever, like, oh, I want to really invest myself into a character. If you are talking in third person the entire session, you're like, okay, well, what do you guys want to do? And then your characters will match your tone. They're going to go, oh, well, I guess I'll walk up to the mayor. And then the DM goes, oh, well, the mayor looks at you. What do you say to him? It's like you don't want to have it be like a chess match. It'd be boring. But yeah, role play with them. Have the mayor, or have the aunt burst through the tavern doors and she falls on the ground. She's covered in blood. All of a sudden you're like, holy smokes! And the characters run over to her. Somebody jumps up and somebody looks at her. Somebody drops a beer mug on the floor. It shatters. She's screaming. You're like, oh! All of a sudden I got all of your attention. You're like, holy shit! What's happening right now? But yeah, hook your players into that. Role play with them. General stuff you need. For playing with friends, you can use an app for dice. You can use D&D Beyond. You can use the pre-made character sheets. If you're playing with friends and they never played D&D, use the basic character sheets. Give them a character sheet. Like, what do you want to play? You want to hit things? You want to shoot spells? Or do you want to be sneaky and stab things? Give them simple options. And then you just give them a character sheet, like, hey, here you go. That way you're not having to spend 2 hours explaining how the character sheet works. They'll learn how the character sheet works. Then they can create their own character. That's my prerogative on it. Unless you got some experienced players, and by all means have it. Judging time. Now this one's a bit diverse. Some DMs will say you don't need to plan it. I personally plan every single one of mine. I'm actually writing down while I'm sitting here talking, just while we just planned out our session. So we got the ant kind of coming in the tavern while you guys are all sitting there. And yes, you started in a tavern. You don't always have to start in a tavern. You can start in a Trask's stomach for all I care. Have them start someplace weird. You start in a cave. Have them start in the middle of town. It's the annual running of the pigs. It's a great festival. That's why you're there. Boom. Gives your characters a reason to be in the town. The mayor was killed during the running of the pigs. Now you lost your uncle, and they've spoiled the running of the pigs festival, which you've came to see. You've waited all year for it. Ant comes into the tavern. Bloody. So I'm writing down my sessions while we're kind of talking about this, but that's your first point for one shot. We'll walk through it at the very end. The very last thing you're going to do is goblin fight. At the very last bit, I'll kind of walk through this simple one shot we're kind of doing, but in the meantime, I'm just writing information and talking out loud here. Back to general stuff. Basic rules, character sheets, dice, and a simple mission. What's the simple mission we're working on right now? You got to go kill some goblins. Who doesn't love killing goblins? I love killing goblins. They're like fodder. Watch out for kobolds. They have pack tactics. So don't throw that at anybody yet. Unless you just, unless you plan it right. Speaking of planning it right, one of the most important things you can do besides judging your time for each scenario is balancing your encounters. Even some dungeon masters don't even know this, but if you turn to like page, I think it's like 81 in the Dungeon Master's Guide, it talks about creating encounters. Save that page and mark it like for your life, because balancing encounters is the bread and butter of being a good dungeon master. We can go more in depth as we jump to a one shot or something like that, or probably next session. But in the meantime, page 81, save it in your mind, and don't ever lose it. Certainly one of my favorites. And there's apps for all this stuff too. There's more apps than you'd ever want to think about. That's everything as far as what you need to know and do as a dungeon master. Basic rules, proper preparation, be fun, judging time, role play, your general equipment, and then balancing encounters. That's everything. And there may be a few more in there. So question number 4, what the heck is on a DM screen, and what is the true secret of being an amazing dungeon master? We'll kind of knock these out in 2 pieces. A dungeon master screen is nothing but basic rules. There may be some odds and ends about characters on there. A lot of them will have your basic encounter stuff, your combat rules. So when the player looks up and says, "Oh, well, how do I do this?" You have right in front of you, so you don't look silly. I use a Dungeon Master's screen or whatever, and I use Stan Shin's. It's like a little PDFs, little rules. And I would highly recommend just printing those out, making them double-sided, and give them to your characters. It's not like gold, or you're giving them the secrets of the game. They're basic rules. It may save, they may have a turn coming up and they're trying to plan their stuff out instead of asking you, like, whoa, what can I do? They already know because you've already given them the little rule sheets and all that stuff. And that link, it's somewhere. I've got it if anybody needs it. But yeah, Stan Shin's DM screen. There's nothing else on it besides that. It's just basic rules. Finally, what's the true secret to being an amazing dungeon master? Playing with friends. You're not here to, murder their players. You're here to offer them a challenging game that they can enjoy and you enjoy as well. That's really the basics of it. But it's kind of like being, like off of Kung Fu Panda. The secret of being like a dragon warrior is nothing, or like the secret ingredient soup. It's nothing. There's no good DM, bad DM. Some DMs love to have crunchy combat. Some DMs love roleplay. Some DMs love the maps. I'm not a map DM. A lot of times I'll just use theater of the mind. That's one of the questions we'll talk about in a second. So if whoever asks that, I'm coming to you. I'm not going to forget you. But yeah, theater of the mind. I started with the maps, and I was a real hardcore DM. I would crush. I was a body crusher. I would, hardcore straight rules. There was no rule of the cool in the game. Oh, that's another one. Rule of cool. Somebody's trying to do something cool. Give it a shot. Let them try to do it. Like, oh yeah, sure, yeah. Unless it's just absolutely crazy. Let your players have that heroic moment. Sorry, I was kind of jumping back there. But yeah, the secret to being an amazing DM, there is nothing. I mean, you're really just rolling dice with friends, attacking imaginary monsters, and you freaking love it. Question number 5. But what about the things I don't have prepared? Now, this one comes with experience. There are going to be things that don't happen. I'm going to use an example. The Icewind Dale campaign. The players saved some individuals from no spoilers, but they saved them from a castle or a place. Anyway, they went to this other place, and they were being followed by the people in the castle, and they abandoned those particular individuals. Now, I mean, and when they were going off or running away or whatever they were doing, they heard screaming. Now, from a dungeon master's perspective, I used very specific verbiage there. They said, oh yeah, they heard screaming, like, oh, they're freaking dead. And as a dungeon master, they said, the players said, oh, they're dead. Are they really dead? I don't know. I'm not going to say the answer to that because I know Angie's in here and she's actually in my game. So I can't say yes or no to that, but you invest your players in that way, sprinkle them little things. Oh, one more important thing as far as characters, give your characters things in the games and stuff like that. That's another important thing. Like build stuff around their characters. Super important, especially for a campaign. One shots, you're really just there to have fun. Let's see. As far as things you don't have prepared, you're thinking on the fly. I mean, you can't be prepared for everything. I wasn't prepared for, I was expecting my players to do this, and they didn't do that. That's always the case, Nobody's going to walk up to your town or this thing of goblins and like this mission for this one shot and go, okay, well, I'm going to go into the doctor's office and go have a shave, I mean, could you RP that out? Sure. I mean, just to go into the shave. You know what the doctor's going to talk about? These freaking goblins that just attacked town. He's like, I don't have time for this. I got to go. I got to get out of here. I mean, town just got attacked by goblins or whatever. Always hook them back in or bring them back or move the story over there. Have them walk into the barber shop and the barber's dead and the goblins are there. You're like, holy shit, when they get there. It's all about thinking on the fly. It comes with experience. I mean, even there's always stuff that is going to test you. Don't be scared of that. There's like, if your players are like, hey, is there a wizard in this town? You're like, roll a die. If it's below a 10, you're like, no, there's no wizard in town. If it's above a 10, you're like, heck yes, there is. His name's Gandalf, the wizard, Gandalf the Grey. Yeah, he's here. Yeah, and he's here with 2 hobbits, and they're passing through, and they're meeting whatever the hell that guy's name was, the big ranger dude. Yeah, and they're in the bar, and they're right over in the corner. He's actually right there. The barkeep points at him. Boom. There you go. There's your wizard. Then you can give him a grumpy old man voice, and you've instantly given yourself another character that didn't even exist 10 seconds ago. If you're ever in doubt, like you're just like, you don't know how to start your game, give them combat. everybody loves rolling dice. One of the things that, obviously we get a couple things going for us right now where we're kind of building this little combat thing is obviously the goblins have attacked the town. The annual running of the pigs is going on. Players enter the town. You step out of the tavern after talking with the lady for a couple seconds, and you hear loud noises outside. There's pigs squealing. You open the doors. All the pigs are set loose. Some of the buildings are on fire, and there's a couple of goblins, wandering around, and they've got some individual that they're about to stab. Roll initiative. They're like, wow, all this stuff just happened so fast and hit me in the face. Your players always give your players opportunities to catch up. You want it to be like somebody just broke into the house. What are you gonna do? Give them that initiative. So that's one of my favorites. So those are my 5 basic points. So you got, what is a dungeon master? Why would I want to be a dungeon master? What do I need to know as a dungeon master? What the heck's a DM screen? And the true secret to being an amazing DM. And what about things I don't have prepared? In the meantime, I've kind of put together a little one-shot while we've been talking. Obviously, we made all this crap up, right? The aunt kind of busts into the tavern all bloody. She informs you of the mayor, right? Now, we want to give this a time limit, right? We don't want to spend a lot of time talking with the aunt, right? So let's say this is a 3-hour session, which a lot of mine are 3 to 4 hours. So we'll just give it 15 minutes. They can talk with her for 15 minutes. It doesn't have to be like that. It can just be around there. Obviously, they step outside. There's goblins out there, right? You don't want to give them a really hard fight at the beginning. Give them something easy. Your level 1 players, make it like it comes with balancing fights. But let's say there's 3 goblins or whatever. So you have 3 goblins outside. So you just put goblin fight for item number 2. Just writing some miscellaneous information down. Fights will last anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. So I just typically set anything that's easy or medium is 30 minutes. I know the goblin fight at the end is going to be hard. So that's 1 hour, 60 minutes. So we have another little session right here. They can talk with this guy, talk with people in the town. Sorry, my baby. You may hear my baby in the background. She's downstairs. While you talk with people in the town, you're looking for clues. That may be about 15 minutes. While you kind of go into the forest, you're looking for the goblin cave. You find the goblin cave, and and it may be a set dungeon that you have or something like that. So I'd say give your players 30 minutes to explore, the dungeon. Give them 30 minutes to explore the dungeon, and then throw a trap in there. Whatever that is. At the beginning of this dungeony cave, there's a riddle. There's a pitfall trap. There's, one of those giant swinging spike balls that comes down and just smashes one of the players because they failed their deck save, and now he's stuck on it, and he's got like 2 health, and everybody's like, holy smokes, what just happened? And we'll just say trap. So 6 parts, you've got the first part where your aunt kind of comes in, talks about everything. That's 15 minutes. You got your goblin fight. That's 30 minutes. That's an easy fight or a medium. You talk with people in town. You're investigating clues. You have people roll some dice, do some investigation checks. I know the ranger is like freaking out and seething at the mouth because they want to look for tracks, and they're like, oh yeah, this is my person that I'm really good at tracking, and we get advantage on all this stuff. And let them have it, let the ranger do the ranger thing. And then obviously the trap comes up. Then you got the walking around the dungeon, and then you've got the big goblin fight, monologue with the goblin man, and boom, get yourself a simple one-shot. That easy. Okay. That's everything that I have as far as being a dungeon master on the basic stuff. We'll talk about one-shots in more detail later, but I've got a bunch of questions I got to get to, I think. And I'll just go ahead and pull back up my questioning things here. And I'm just going to run through these real quickly or real slowly. So I've got a couple basic questions. one of the things that they wanted to ask about was the implementing of theater of the mind into campaigns that feature a lot of combat. Because many of the roles, such as hiding and flanking, which I understand is optional, and even keeping track of where the players are for the purposes of a dragon breath attack or whatever, can be muddled or confusing when the dungeon master solely relies on theater of the mind with no battle map. I feel the situation hurts many people that would give dungeon mastering a shot, if not for how painstakingly tedious finding and creating battle maps is. So we got a couple of things to touch base on here. First one is implementing theater of the mind. I'm running The Hunted on the 17th of this month. I've got 7 players, and I've got fights, right? There are certain fights where I know if it's an easy fight, theater of the mind, that's easy. But it's, as for the big boss fight, comes a point where you realize, you're like, oh, I need a map for this. I need to grab a map. And it can be the simplest thing you possibly can, There's apps out there. There's Roll20. There's that Owlbear Rodeo thingy. There's all kinds of them. And everybody you can move players. Players can move themselves in some of them. Like, for example, the one I'm going to use, I'll just move the players because a lot of the times in Theater of the Mind, the way it works, you say, I want to do this, and I work in construction, so plans are up in my head anyway. So I kind of, that's how I utilize that stuff. I'm like, okay, yeah, you kind of dodge around some stuff, or you want to hide behind a rock. Like, oh, they say, oh, is there rocks around me? Always describe with Theater of the Mind. It's so important to get the senses, so you're like sight, smell, sound, taste, and touch. The town's on fire. You smell the smoke. There's the smell of iron in the air. The tavern itself that you're in does smell like, it's a mix of fiery smoke and actual cigar smoke. There's a couple of tables around. There's a couple of individuals. They're all drinking ale. Kind of smells piss soaked. There's straw on the floor. It's kind of spongy. You can it's got like some give to it. You don't know whether it's the floor that's rotted or if it's the hay that's under your feet. So there's, give them a little bit of description of the area, As far as fights go, it's pretty self-explanatory. 7 people and like 3 bad guys in a Theater of the Mind, that's tough. I don't care what anybody says. That's a tough, because everybody's going, where am I again? That's why a lot of times Theater of the Mind, you'll see me do like 4 people, because 7 people is pretty crunchy. But yeah, I think that's there was a second part to that one. Battle maps. Grab it off the internet. There's a trillion of them. Don't be a, I'm not saying you don't have to create your own battle maps, but be a vulture. I mean, there's literally, go to Reddit, D&D maps, and boom, you're welcome. There's 1,000 maps right there. There's maps of towns. There's maps of this, maps of that. There's all kinds of maps. But yeah, I think that answers those 2 questions, unless there's another one in there. Let me look again. No. It's a choice. Like, as far as Theater of the Mind, or do you have to use Theater of the Mind? No. Do you have to use maps? No. It's all in the DMs. Like, for example, a lot of the other DMs on the server, they'll use maps. Owlbear Rodeo, I think Patchy's using that for his. And I think Angie's using it too, so. Let's see. Oh, here's a good one. This is probably what everybody's thinking about. Another question I have is on dealing with problem players. How do you best go about handling problem players that doesn't sour the rest of the party's opinion of you? Many of my attempts to run campaigns has ended due to said players ruining my fun of the game, combined with the fear of the other players feeling as if I'm being unreasonable or reprimanding to certain behaviors. The power-hungry DM aesthetic isn't what I want for myself. While you don't want to be the bad guy, it's very important that if there's a situation that you are uncomfortable with, you need to stop it immediately. Do not let that continue, because it's like a bad wound that you just cover up with dirt. If you skip over it, the next time you look at it, it's going to be worse. And it's going to be a lot worse. I'll give you an example. I had a crazy player not crazy player. The person himself is not crazy. His character is crazy. He would roll a d20, and any time he rolled, I don't know what it was. It was like equal to a 5 or under. He would stab somebody. He'd just do it, and he would do it. Any interaction, any role playing, or any conversation he had, he would just roll it. And so he'd roll it like 15 times in a conversation, and then he'd be like, I stabbed this guy, and you're just like, okay, and the reason I bring that up is because, not just because of the fact that he's stabbing a guy or whatever, that's not that big of a deal, but you can handle that and be like, oh gosh, but there's other people in the game, like people didn't come here to watch Joe Schmo stab little old ladies. People came to go for the one shot and stuff like that. This isn't your DM session. This is the team's team. You're all players. If you want to have a one-on-one, ask a DM or something. And if players want to go along with that, that's fine. But you can't. If a player's starting to overhaul a game or something like that, or if they're doing weird stuff like, I don't know. One of my biggest pet peeves, I got a big thing on bards. It's my biggest, like, bards are like, oh yeah, is there any barmaids in the bar? And you're just like, oh shit, here it comes. I'm like, oh yeah, I like her, and I'm like, oh, I spank her butt or something. You're like, see how awkward that makes you feel? This guy's RPing out this weird, awkward sexual situation. You're like, hey man, don't do that. You got to set your levels at the very beginning. Like, hey, this game's PG. It's like we're walking through Disney World here. We're not spanking girls' butts. We're not sleeping with people. We're not doing any of that stuff. If you want to have a flirty conversation or whatever, that's whatever. She may give you like a wink or something like that. Yeah, sure. There you go. But don't make people uncomfortable. It's weird. So that's the whole gist, is make sure you set those bars beforehand. Don't just play, And I think a lot of people, it all depends on the DM. Because some people would come in cursing. Some people, and this is just outside the game, but some people curse a lot. And I say my bit. I think I've said ass and other things and butt and anyway. So you have those extra little bits and pieces that outside of game. Well, I have a baby. I've got, and then some other people have babies or whatever. Their kids may be in the next room and have their phone on speaker. Is that the best thing to do? I don't know, but have that respect for them as a person. Help them out a little bit. But hopefully that answers that question. Do it quickly and cleanly. The rest of the party itself, it says, sour the rest of the party's opinion of you. You're the dungeon master. You're here to run a game. If people are being weird and creepy, tell you like, hey man, don't be weird and creepy. And everybody's like, yeah, don't do that. It's not, and it's something you could message them about while you're playing. Don't have to do it necessarily at the table. Anyway, I think that answers that one. What do I do if I haven't played a D&D game, but I want to be a dungeon master, but since nobody in my close friends group plays Dungeons and Dragons. This one's be the dungeon master. I mean, you have done enough research by now. You can figure it out. Are you guys going to get all the rules right? No, absolutely not. They're going to fumble all over the place. You're going to do crazy things. Are you going to have fun? Absolutely. That's what it's all about. You can work the details out later. This as long as you understand the basics of Dungeons and Dragons, you're fine. Give them the character sheets like we talked about. Get the starter kits, $13 on Amazon. Hell, play with your mom and dad and brother and sister and all that stuff. There are some people that have started on here like 8. They're 8 years old. I wish I started when I was then. But yeah, that's the easiest way to do it. Oh, and obviously getting the books. I can't. I want to say you don't need the books, and in a way you kind of don't. But it's just so much nicer just to have the player's handbook. Really, the basic rules, and then the monsters. Monster guide. That way you have monsters. You can go grab a monster. You can look them up. You can look up all this stuff. It's all on the internet somewhere. But yeah, that's the DMing for. None of my close friends want to do it. If you're trying to make a themed encounter, but it ends up being too strong or too weak, what are some good ways to adjust so your players are having fun fighting against them? This is one of the important things we talked about in the What Do I Need to Know to Be a DM, which is balancing encounters, page 81 in the DMG. It's all about the XP threshold, So if you have level 1 players, an easy fight for one level 1 player is 25, medium is 50, hard is 75, and deadly is 100. So if you've got 3, level 1 players and you want to give them an easy fight, that's 75 XP. So then you just go find a monster or monsters, they're 75 XP or less. You can give them like, I don't know, a goblin and 2 bats or something like that. But you always match that XP. You always want to hit that XP threshold. And there's other technical things in there, but we can get into that in the one-shot stuff. But that's a super important thing to do is balancing encounters. The second question, which is very similar to the first, is how do I make a boss NPC for level 1 players? I would grab something that's already existing, and you really just want it to be like 1 monster or maybe 2 monsters. You already have the stat blocks, just throw a new skin on them, and bam, you got a new monster. Instead of being a goblin, have it be like some kind of crazy. Have it be some kind of crazed human dude that's got like, super human strength. So, it's not a commoner. Goblins are stronger than commoners. And, anyway, have him be wearing a loincloth or whatever, just describe him differently. But is the goblin? Boom. There you go. We can get into monster making if we can maybe make that a session. That one's complicated. But yeah, page 81. Number 3, what are some basic things I need to write down to keep track of any potentially important NPCs? Important NPCs in a campaign. The book's pretty much, if you're running a campaign book, that the information's already there, and a lot of times they already have descriptors. I would just write down like little bits and pieces of like maybe half a sentence on something that's happened, how the players know that NPC. So when they come back to town, they're like, oh, there's McGregor again, and he's pounding away at the iron, and he lifts up his goggles, and he's got soot kind of on his face, and his beard's, it's kind of hanging down in the fire, so it looks like he's hit it a couple of times. There's a couple of burnt spots on his beard, but he doesn't even pay it any attention. He waves at the players. He knows them. He's learned their names. So yeah, that's a lot of times, and just write down little information. Did the players treat somebody badly? Oh, they're going to remember that. Make sure you can always keep a little log of just miscellaneous information. Let me go. I got to turn the air up one. I'm a little cold. Okay. But yeah, a lot of times you can ad-lib them out a little bit and give your character some meat. Now, in a one-shot, do you need to have 16 characters prepared? No. Give yourself, like I said, 2 or 3. You've got the ant, you've got, potentially the big bad goblin guy, and a couple of people in town, Gandalf the Wizard. There you go. There's your Gandalf the Wizard. That was your other guy. You kind of make him up on the fly. Make him look like Gandalf or Dumbledore or whatever. He's wearing glasses, got a big nose, kind of wearing a hat that's too small for his head, Let's see. Okay. Balancing an encounter. Again, it's come up. That's the 3rd time. Page 81 in the DMG. There you go. I like this one. When do you just want to annoy the party and waste their time with the fight? And when do you want to bring the heat and go for the throats? Okay. So you never want to annoy your party with a fight. You don't want to give them something but like, wow, why are we even fighting these things? You don't want to give a level 5 party 3 goblins to fight, because then you're like, unless it's, works with the story or whatever, sure. Give them something that's, because then there's what do you call it? Tedious. It's like, there's a point. There's easy, medium, hard, deadly. But there's also the one past easy, which is tedious, or, it's like, wow, this is silly. You don't want to throw 3 spiders at a group of which are worth 0 XP at a group of, whatever. You don't just want to waste their time. Give them something that's not necessarily challenging or whatever. The last fight of any one shot is always going to be your hard one. Period. Always make, I make mine typically hard, or on the upper thresholds of hard. Just because you never know. Characters are always going to behave a little bit stronger than what you expect. They always seem to surprise me. But that's hopefully that answers that one. Let's see here. What's this next one? How do you know when to balance the number of NPCs that are interactive? The NPCs, they come up again. And the ones that are purely related to the plot and not make it obvious plot hooking / railroading when they appear. You don't want. This is another thing that we need to touch on as far as DMing. Keep your players on the. It's like they're running on a school track. Like at the track meets and stuff. There's lanes. They don't have to stay in the same lane. Even when you're running the track, you don't have to stay in the same lane. But you're always going the same way. Keep them going in the same direction and help them out a little bit. But don't railroad them. Don't be like, oh, well, all of a sudden all of you realize that you need to go do this, and you go do this. That's railroading. But the other thing is, it's like, oh, you guys need to go fight these goblins, so you go into the woods. Let them go into the woods, Maybe they want to hang around town for a little bit. Maybe they want to talk to some more people. But that they're going to go. Let them do it, But that's kind of where that timing thing comes in. You got 15 minutes, or as long as it lasts, That's why it's so important to make sure you get that timing down, because then you could, if you don't have timing set, you're taking it's disrespectful to your players. So that's kind of where that's coming from. Okay, what's this other thing? Biggest difference, approach to the game. Oh, here we go. This one's a good one. What's the biggest difference in approach to the game when doing a campaign versus a one-shot? Campaign is a very long adventure. And when I say long adventure, if a campaign can be anywhere from 20 sessions to over 200. That's a so what that's one of my biggest pet peeves is on Reddit. People will say, "I want a campaign. I want a campaign. I want a campaign," but you can't commit to the campaign. That's literally if I walked up to each of you and said, "Hey, we're going to meet bi-weekly or weekly every Saturday for the next 2 years. Can you do that?" I don't know a single person that would go, "Yep, I'm your man." Even myself. There's going to be times where I do that. But, and campaigns, bi-weekly. Run them bi-weekly. That way other people have plans to do other things. That's just my 2 cents. You don't have to take that. That's the difference between that and a one-shot. One-shot you make immediately. It's a simple thing. Everybody rolls up a character and you go play D&D. That's why people love one-shots, because they're sporadic. They're not time-sensitive. You solve the thing in the time frame it is, and boom, you're done. That's it. Homebrew versus pre-written campaigns. If you've never run a campaign, I would suggest just doing a pre-written one. Out of the Abyss is a good one. That's a pretty long one. That's 1 to 15. But do Lost Mines of Fendover. Do the easy one. I love that one. Any DM is like, "What should I run?" Run that. It's like 16 sessions at the longest, and the players go from level 1 to level 5. It's a great story. They can die if they're silly enough. But yeah, there's plenty of stuff in there. I love Lost Mines. I love running that for new players. Homebrew. There's a lot of people on here that are homebrew their worlds. That part of the fun of that is brewing your own world. I've personally played with it a little bit. My biggest tip for that is small to big. Create your town. Maybe create a few of the other towns, 3 towns maybe. Work in that area. Build your pool out of there, and then start building up your campaign. Overarching details. That's what you want to do. Get what's your main accomplishment for the campaign, and then your it's like chapters of a book. When you hit the new chapter, that's your points that you're trying to hit, and then throw adventures in between those. That's it. There you go. Campaign. Yeah, homebrew. Anyway, let's see. How do you handle it when players are wanting to do things that you do? Oh, there we go. We already answered this one. It's kind of an experience thing. You really just want to react to what the players do. Players are never going to do something that's absolutely insane. If they do, it means they're trying to test you as a DM, and that'd just be kind of rude. But I've had that happen before, where people are trying to test me, and try to create something. Here's a really good one. How much should be prepared? When to make players do X and Y. One shots, prepare the whole thing. Campaign, I would prepare. I only prepare just the adventure ahead. As far as my Icewind Dale campaign, I just prepare one. Whatever I'm doing this upcoming session, that's the one I prepare. I don't have a second one prepared after that, because it could always change. You hate to prepare something, like, oh my gosh, I just wasted all my time doing that. We talked about difficulty already. Monster choice. That one's like a CR, kind of thing. Make it predominant to the area. You know what I'm saying? If you're in the middle of the ocean, don't put a bunch of goblins out there, or swimming in the water. Maybe do something else. Are they on a boat? Now we're talking. Do something different. When should I start DMing? That's a very good question. I would make sure you're playing as a player first. It sounds crazy to say, but it lets you learn the game. So you want to play as a player, get your basics down. You start to see what the other players do, and you start to learn the basics of the game itself. Once you get the basics down, then you can DM. Instead of just going in raw, that's, when should I take on homebrew, and how should I balance money and experience? Homebrew, you could start that right now. That's just world building. You can just, if you got something in your mind, write it down. That's no big deal. Balancing money and experience. I'm always on the end. Give your players less than what you're kind of thinking, because it builds up fast. Oh, and make them have pay the piper. Make them do like the daily payments or something like that. That way they're not just holding on to like 4,000 gold, because then you're like, oh, a rogue stole your gold in the middle of the night, so now you're poor again. That's never fun. A lot of times in the campaigns, they're going to have that stuff. In the one shots, you can give them whatever. Give them something that's balanced to their level. I gave a mask out one session that, I don't know. I can't remember if it was just a disguised self or something like that. I thought that was pretty neat. XP, follow whatever the monsters do, and it'll calculate it up for you. What kind of campaign should a newcomer dungeon master do? Lost Mines, which we kind of talked about. What is homebrew? We talked about homebrew, but we didn't give it a definition. Homebrew is something you literally brew up, like a witch's cauldron. You're brewing a campaign. How do I create maps? Okay, if you want to create maps, there's like Kassoon. There's what's the other one? There's Kassoon, Albo Rodeo. That's one. We talked about that one, but and then there's like Don John. It has like a random dungeon generator. It's pretty cool. Is being a DM hard? Yes and no. No more than yes. No, because of the fact that you can. It's as easy or as hard as you would like. That's the best way I can answer that. Once you play a couple games, you're good. How do you find campaigns? Campaigns are on the server under the available campaigns. The kicker with campaigns is they fill up super fast, and a lot of the spots will sporadically become empty, because campaigns are a commitment. You're locking yourself in for a while, but I can jump on that soapbox later. Here's a unique question: what is writing? Writing is where you let me think how I want to answer. What is writing? Writing is basically where you're prepping for the game. So I write typically like a paragraph or two for each little section. So section 1, Ant comes into the tavern bloody. That's all I put down for my little section. But down below, I've got like a detailed paragraph, kind of where the ant runs in. She's covered with blood. Some dude drops a beer bottle or whatever, crashes to the floor. You guys run up to her. She's not injured, but it's her husband's blood, So there's a whole little questions there. Where do you get maps? We touched base on that, which is, you can go to, they're all over the internet. If you type in D&D maps or Dungeons and Dragons maps, and then you go to images, boom, there you go. What do you recommend for graphic design? Now that is definitely Angie's turf. That's not my prerogative. Angie, do you have any suggestions on that one?
For the question, I'm assuming, I don't know if it was necessarily towards maps, or?
Oh yeah, yeah. I figured it'd be specifically for the maps and
Well,
maybe
I
so.
think for maps, like, I mean, okay, so if you're having a pre-made module, most of the times they'll already have maps ready, aside from some that are kind of just like really simple theater of mind type things, where it's like, this strange incident occurs and these attack them. And that's kind of like simple theater of the mind, and they purposely don't give you a map because it's supposed to be for flavor and not actually like an intense combat scene. And so I personally, I use incarnate.com for when I make my maps, because it's only like $25 for the whole year, and you get access to all of their different stuff for like watercolor, fantasy cities, and maps, and other stuff. And there's plenty of stuff. So I usually use that to make, if I want to make a map and I want to make it, then I'll use that, because there's plenty of stuff you can use. But there's plenty of websites that people use, different virtual tabletop areas that have their own ways to create maps. I can always link, because I think I'm going to put this on YouTube as well. I can put in the description a bunch of links to map making websites that are completely free to use. Incarnate is free, but you won't get all these stamps and options to make it as pretty as you might want, but it's still something. There's always the option, if you want, to just do it by hand and take a photo of it, and you can share that, and that's totally okay. If you have a printer that has a copy on it, you could just copy your image, and boom, bam, you have a map. So, like, there's plenty of ways you can make a map. I'm not exactly sure if they meant something else when it comes to graphic design, but, when you just have to make something that works with, like, your scene. And most of the times, it'll give you a description of everything.
And I'm getting a couple of questions that are kind of coming in. If you guys have questions, I'm going to kind of answer these that have come in, but you can go ahead and we'll line up your questions. And if you got a question, ask me here in a second. Once I got 2 of them here, or 3 of them. What is your strategy for controlling enemies in combat? How intelligent do you control them? And how do you decide how cruel to be? Mike, it all depends. So, for example, 1 is if you're running a group of wolves and they've got pack tactics or whatever, and they're trying to, if they're in a fight, don't get too deep in the weeds here. If you down a player, some people will be like, oh yeah, well the wolves are just going to keep attacking them. I mean, maybe, have you ever been out, I would personally think the wolves, obviously there's other threats. The wolves are going to move on to other threats that are more in the area. If they down a player and there's literally a player standing right next to them with a sword, do you think they're going to be like, all right, I'm going to just eat here? No, they're going to go for, the other guy. How cruel to be? Oh, I'll answer that with a story. One time I downed a player. They rolled really bad. Anyway, I gave him a coup de grace, which basically means if a player is unconscious and they are attacked, I think it's an insta-crit, and it's 2. They get 2 death saves knocked off, which means it's 2 fails. And I've done that one time, and I've never done it since then because it was a brand new player and they were level 1, and I hit them while they were down. There's a whole story after this, but I'm not going to get into the details here. Anyway, they rolled their last die. They failed. They die. Pack your shit up and get out of here. That's how it. I obviously didn't say that, but I was like, oh man, you're dead. That's it. There's no more. And it was because I hit them while they were down. I have not done that since then. I would just say give the team a chance to get the player up. Always try to, if you're going to hit them, allude to it. Be like, oh, he's still looking at him. You guys, I'm not saying coax them into healing a player or whatever, but I would venture on the latter. Be a little, go for fun. Answer, go for fun. That's how cruel to be. Go for fun. For example, the hunted that's coming up. Steal your balls because I'm coming for you. I run my monsters, especially if they're intelligent. I run my monsters as if I'm running a character. I'm going to make the most advantageous thing that I would do. Because I'm obviously not trying to die either, but I'm wanting to give you guys a challenge. Do you have an algorithm you adhere to? Algorithm as in, you mean like how I prep my games, or an algorithm for prepping fights? For combat. Okay, do I have an algorithm for combat? You're just roll with the initiative. A lot of times I'll even preset my monsters. I'll roll them ahead of time and give a space in between each of them. That way when the players are done, it's instant combat. I'm not sitting here rolling 5 sets of dice and writing that down. It's already pre-made. As far as and balancing encounters, it's super important. Do not forget to balance encounters, because if for example, the players on Icewind Dale fought an ice troll. Could they have fought an ice troll? No, but they had some help from it was like a yeti, a frost yeti or whatever, for reasons unbeknownst to this conversation. But could they have defeated it? I don't know. It would have been hard. But I knew, given that sense of threat there. Hopefully that answers your question. As far as combat goes, and if you go to the Stan Shin's DM sheets, it runs through everything you can do in combat. Boom, 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 boom. It's like, oh, you want to do this? Here's your action. Here's your reaction. For example, one thing I forgot the other day is you only get one reaction when you're, on a turn. So a player actually used it. That's the first time I've ever run into it, I think. Like, oh yeah, and he played it perfectly. I think if I didn't give him inspiration, then he should have deserved it. It was pretty good. Very well played. Very good combat move. Got another one here. How do you make one-shots memorable and not just the same do this, fight something formula? Okay, so you've got a couple of options here. You don't have to fight this thing. You can go exploring. You can go through a dungeon delve. You can, there's options that you can do. I think there was like a sheet. Oh, let me see if I can find it real fast. There it is. Okay, so it's like dungeon encounters. What do you want to do? You can slay monsters. You can free prisoners. You can gather resources. You can subdue a target. Assassinate someone. Escort an NPC. Find a cure. Break a curse. Unveil secrets. Treasure hunt. Gather resources. Solve puzzles. You can map build. Gets trapped in a dungeon and try to find an exit. Learn spells. Jump through a portal. Trigger traps. One of my favorites is, oh gosh, where is it? Skills challenge. That one's pretty fun. It's, and we may have talked about this a little bit, but skills challenges are pretty fun where you're in a chase. And there's all kinds of stuff on YouTube. All kinds of things I do differently. Like, for example, chase scenes, doing something completely different. You guys won't even know what hit you. It's something that's I saw on YouTube, and I'm just like, I'm doing that, and that's all I'm doing from now on because that is amazing. But yeah, there's all kinds of things you do. You don't have to do, okay, instead of a goblin fight, maybe there's, instead of you go in to fight the goblins, but you find all of a sudden the cave's collapsing, and so now, now it's instead of the whole thing's a trap, you've been lured into a thing. Unveil secrets. Do like a role play where you're kind of walking into like a big fancy party, and the players are having to gather intel for something that you have coming up, or gathering intel for a person. Let them RP that out, and then obviously there's situations where skills challenges, and here's I need to be specific here. Skills challenges are taking advantage of what the players are good at. Now you have an RP, a role play session. You know who's not going to be good at that? Probably the barbarian or the fighter. They're going to be like, wow, this is going to be a lot of fun. Let them use their abilities. Like, okay, well, what do you want to do? Like, oh, well, I want to use my, athleticism. I know the door's locked, but I know the balcony's right over there. I want to try to jump over there instead of unlocking this door. Can I try to do that? Well, hell yes, you can. There's some other people in there, so you're going to have to try to, do it. It's going to be pretty high because I know you're not stealthy and, stuff like that. They're like, okay, I'm going to go for it. And they roll a 15. You're like, you do it. You jump over, and you manage to stay out of everybody's eyesight. Everybody's kind of drunk in the room already, But there's plenty of other, options besides go fight this monster. Fight the monster is just always the easy one I kind of go with.
I'm just going to speak on this just because I'm running some weird ones. I don't want to talk about all of them because some of you guys are signed up for them. But like one of them I have coming up actually tomorrow, which I still need to prep for. Oops. That one is all about like a prophecy, and there is a huge fight that does happen, but the thing is that there's a twist to it that allows the players to go through the fight in a different way than you would normally suspect a fight to happen. And I won't really talk on that, but later in another session, once that one's done tomorrow, I can talk more about it. But then there's stuff like I have a cooking quest that's coming up where it's literally an entire cooking competition where you guys are like going and running and grabbing ingredients, and then you guys are making different recipes. And you're trying to make the most flavorful, best recipe you can possibly think of to win this competition. And there's different rules behind it. Another good thing is if you're like creating your own one shot and you want it to be different and not just like a regular fight, is a good thing is just look up like a random word generator. And look up something really random, and you could get something really dumb. Like, you could be like, there's this one module I really want to run where it's all about a giant, and she wants to be wed to like this one dude, but he's already getting married to someone else. And so basically you have to like run between the two weddings and try to appease them both so that she doesn't like destroy everyone. Like, it's really dumb, but it works. So, you could be like, oh, there's a panda and a shovel. Those are the two words I got. Okay. So you're helping a panda and they're trying to shovel out an area for a garden. And I'm making this off the top of my head. They want to make a garden, their own little cute little garden and everything. And so they want you to go get some supplies and different various things. But while you're digging and helping them, once you come back with the different like supplies for their garden, you're digging, and then there's something that comes from the ground, and then that's the combat that happens. But the majority of it can be role play. So you can just look up like really dumb random words, and then from that like think of something creatively.
Yeah. I'm thinking three things like, you bring up generators. Donjon, Kassoon, and Sly Flourish are. The Sly Flourish is more of related to DM stuff if you have like want to read things, but Kassoon and Donjon are both great sites. Anyway, but yeah, I think that's all the questions that I've gotten. I think I've run through all of them. Anybody else have anything else? Cool, nice and easy.
Can we talk now, or
yeah.
Send it over to him? Oh, okay. It's kind of rough. Like, I just have problems committing to things. Like, either work or my brain is just like, oh, this is a better idea, do this instead, and it's just kind of spirals. So how do you stick to one thing without hating it?
Yeah, I mean, you got to be. It's kind of like baking a cake. You're already cooking it. Don't change your mind. There's always going to be a chance for you to run whatever else you're wanting to run. If you've got several ideas lined up, several one shots or whatever, just do one of them. Like, what we talked about. If you got 20 of them, roll a d20, like, oh, that's the one I'm running. Then stick to it. Do that one.
That's what I do. I can't ever decide between, like, I have so many, like, preset modules that I recently bought or have downloaded, and I literally, what I'll do is I'll grab, like, one or two like books or like files or something, and then I'll count how many there is, excluding any that I've already run, because I don't want to double run something unless I really enjoyed it. And then I'll just roll, and then I'll be like, okay, that's what I'm running, and that's what it is. And then I end up really enjoying it because it was kind of like really random and spontaneous.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's okay if you aren't that interested in something to say, like, okay, maybe I shouldn't run this, And it sucks to admit it and be like, hey guys, so I'm not feeling it, Because it's DM burnout is a thing too. It's not just player burnout.
That's so dangerous. We could have a whole topic on that.
Yeah, and so you have to understand, like, your own. You have to enjoy the game too, not just the players. So and you can always be like, hey guys, can we at least have like this week off, and you can get like a break to think about like what you want to do. I had to postpone a campaign I was planning to run because I realized my schedule was too crazy, and on top of that, I was starting to lose interest in that one because I was so excited about this other one that I'm currently running. And so I was like, I can't focus on the two at the same time because I won't be as enthusiastic, and I don't want to do that to the players. So even if you feel like you have that commitment to them, you also have a commitment to yourself and like your mental health and you enjoying the game too, because it's it's a fun side hobby. It shouldn't be like a job you don't enjoy.
Yeah. I was gonna ask if anybody, if you guys have more questions, I mean, feel free to message me or something. But I'm gonna jump off here. Angie, you got anything else for me?
I don't really have anything else. The only thing is, for those of you in the BC, as well as anyone that is going to be watching this, we will have at least 2 more sessions or 2 more parts to this like series. The next one that's supposed to be coming up is going to be all about homebrewing, because that in and of itself is a huge topic to deal with. And so that's going to be the next one. I don't know when it's going to be yet, but that's going to be the next one. So if you have homebrew questions, I'll be putting out another form for that one specifically, and I'll ask for homebrew specific questions. And that's when we'll go into detail about homebrewing and how you should go about it. And there's some other ones, but we'll talk about that after the next one.
Cool. All right, guys.
I really appreciate y'all setting this up. This is giving me a lot of confidence. And Angie, I might ping you in the next couple days to maybe set something up.
You do it. You do it, brother.
Do it. Yeah, I started playing D&D like 7-8 months ago. I don't even remember. Like, it's been less than a year. I know it's less than a year because I started not too long ago. And then I literally like a month ago, I had my first session, which was a one shot. And I think you were in my first one shot.
Yeah, you were great.
So exactly, like, I was super nervous, and every time before a session, my stomach goes, ugh, and I like get all these like butterflies, and I get super anxious. But then once it starts happening, it like just like flows, and it's really fun. So you should definitely just like try it out. And like I said, on this server, we have the DM performance check so that players can review DMs. But on the DM side of things, then we get the responses back and we know, like, okay, maybe we should work on this, or we should add this to our campaign, or the next time I run a one-shot, I should consider this and factor this into that, because I hadn't thought about that before. But now I understand from the player's point of view why I maybe should have done that, or to understand like what you're good at and what they enjoy. And then you can continue to thrive and do that because people enjoy it. So there's plenty of ways to like feel more confident about your DMing on the server specifically. But in general, it's okay to ask your players for how did you think the session went? Something I like to do, I think Goose does this sometimes too. Sorry, kind of tired. Is after the session ends, if this won't reveal anything, is you guys can kind of discuss like what happened in the session, what the DM was, what you were thinking, and certain points, and how you weren't expecting certain things to happen, or maybe what would have happened. But if the what would have happened could still be a possibility, obviously don't reveal that. But then it shows the players like what you were thinking and how they like challenged you, and you know, it'll encourage them to be more playful and do more stuff in the game.
I'm swinging all big.